Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now this week we have one of the truly great entrepreneurs of Africa. A man who grew up in poverty so severe that his family often couldn't afford the 25 cents a year school fees. A man who grew up in the shadow of brutal police and tough gangsters. He ran gambling dice games to survive and always had an eye on the future. We're talking about Herman Mashaba, an entrepreneur who started out selling door to door and came up with the idea of a mass market hair care product, Black Like Me. That was to make him a fortune. He's a multimillionaire and he's not finished yet. Well, I'm glad that you've had time to join us in the studio. Just tell us a little. You were born in Hammanskraal near Pretoria, here in South Africa. Just tell us a little bit about how tough your childhood was.
First of all, Chris, thank you very much for CNBC for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. Yes, born and brought up in Hammanskraal almost 53 years ago. 26th of August will be my 53rd birthday in a small village called Garamotse. It's a small village just opposite Babelegi industrial area. You know, most people, South Africans, obviously would really know Babelegi industrial area. It's an area just opposite. That Babelegi industrial area used to really be our farming area. My grandfather had a farm there, so during the summer, the season, there'll be plowing meals and so forth. And then sometime in the early 70s, with the homeland system coming into being, that whole area was actually turned into an industrial area. And that small village, that's where I was born.
And you, when you were young, I mean, most of the time you were short of food, let alone money.
Well, I think I was really quite unfortunate that when I started seeing what was happening around, my mother wasn't around. There was a domestic worker here in Johannesburg, only visiting us once, twice a month if she was lucky to afford to come and see us. So I was actually brought up by my sisters. And at the time when I started seeing what was happening in the West, at the time, all of them still at school. And it wasn't easy. I lost my father at the age of 2, and you can imagine actually growing up not having the opportunity to call someone dad. You know, that's something to me, it's totally foreign to me. You know, I'm always saying to my kids, I'm so jealous and envious of them having a dad around, because I've never called someone a dad in my life. I don't know what it feels like or what it means to really call someone dad.
Now, your mother, she was a great influence on you. One of the things in your recent book that I find interesting is that she almost had to escape from her employers to come and see you on the train for a few hours.
I mean, my sisters obviously later used to relate this to me, that you know, my mother used to, because obviously the time of visiting their family was very limited. Fortunately enough, Hammanskraal and Joburg is only just over an hour's drive, and obviously taking taxis and buses. I believe she would obviously pitch up home at about 9, 10 at night, you know, after obviously putting her employer's kids to bed, and then sleep out, take a train to Hammanskraal, get to Hammanskraal. Actually, there was a Kakana station there where Babelegi industrial area is, and it was bush at the time. She'd obviously walk all the way to our house. And then about 3, 4 in the morning, my sisters would actually walk her back to station, so that by 6 o'clock she's back without her employers noticing that she had gone to see her family, because their time was limited.
Life was tough for you. I mean, you could argue that maybe Cinderella had it a lot easier than you did growing up. I mean, you said you used to get beaten at school, you used to get the police waiting for you, wanting to stop you on the streets, and even then you survived. But one thing that struck me about your frankness, about your biography, about your life, was the fact you said, well, I both bought and took drugs. And you don't mind admitting that.
Fortunately enough, I think at the time it was Dacha, and we survived it. You know, but I think for me, why I've Chris decided to relate my life into the book, so that I think as a country, let's really take some experiences out of this. What is actually quite interesting about really shaping my life to really be an entrepreneur and take personal responsibility for my life. I always share this with my white counterparts that, you know, until I was 20s or so, I was under the impression that white people are evil creatures. and evil creatures that we needed to kill for us as black people to survive. And the reason why I thought whites were evil creatures, because everything I heard about them and I saw and experienced with them, they were just out there to unleash violence on black people. You know, you're going to, I mean, you grow up with families talking about my mother, people who will obviously relate their personal experiences of their relationship with whites. You're still a youngster. And then all of a sudden, from time to time, you get an opportunity to go to Pretoria, the town. And every time you meet with whites, they were just all the time unleashing violence. And I said, how are you going to really survive with us? That's the reason why I actually took a conscious decision when we turned 15, 16. My peers used to go into the white neighborhoods in Pretoria North and Pretoria West to go and do gardens. And I decided not to. I said, I'm staying away from this because I don't want to be influenced. Why? Because I saw people actually, dignities being taken away from them. Elder people, now all of a sudden, guys at 15, 16, their dignities totally eroded. And I said, the only way I can really keep my dignity is to avoid contact with these evil creatures. But later on, it's interesting. That's when I really had an opportunity to really meet with people and discover these are all wonderful human beings like myself. And that's the reason why, Chris, I think for me, at the moment, in the new dispensation, I'm actually committed in ensuring that South Africa cannot really go back in the polarization of our races.
Just get back to your progress towards an entrepreneur, your next project, just after you left school, when your friends and colleagues came back as being gardeners, bringing their money with them at the weekends, used to be what they call in South Africa a knocksman, a dice shaker.
Well, obviously, the knocksman is like you're a government in that environment. We call it a school. And because I also needed money, and but then at the same time, these guys on Saturdays, they'll be prepared to really wake up, get home at 4 or 5 in the morning, go and work in the white neighborhoods, and they start coming back in the townships from 3, 4 in the afternoon. I'll wait for them, and we start gambling.
And gambling on dice, and sometimes it would get violent and dangerous.
No, well, I think it's not sometimes, most of the time. I mean, actually gambling was always actually meant for the tough, the guys. Obviously, the weak, the guys would never come anywhere near. I mean, it's not a conducive environment for someone who doesn't like violence. Obviously, you want money, but at the same time, violence is the order of the day because there's always disputes. That's why, you know, for you to really be able to really play properly and have someone like me as a knocksman, you need a strong government so that there's discipline, you know, because there's always disputes, there's always issues. You know?
And there you moved on, you started selling door to door, and that must have been very, very difficult 30 odd years ago.
Well, I think what made it really more difficult for me was the pass laws. My movement totally restricted. I mean, you know, in Amanskraal we had the police training college where you know, the apartheid regime used to train black policemen to be deployed all over the country. So for us, people of Amanskraal were the training ground. You know, so it is really very difficult to really move around because the police would really be all over for past offenses. Any black person, I remember actually, I had to actually take my IID, my reference book. Those days we used to call it reference book. Before I even turned 16, you had to take it at the age of 16. I actually took my reference book before the age of 15 or 16 because I used to travel into town and come in from time to time, visit my mother here in Johannesburg. And I needed obviously to have my school to stamp it because at least if you have there's a reference book and the school stamps it that you're still employed, you had a chance of surviving from the police.
When you were going door to door, do you think you were selling like crockery and linen?
Yeah, I started, my first job that I tried was insurance because obviously the apartheid regime at the time said black people, no business, you've got to work for a white employer and he signs your reference book every month that you're employed with him. And I decided, you know, with or without this legislative framework, I've got to find a way to survive. That's when I bought a car, then I started selling. You know, companies advertising in the papers that you want to become a millionaire, you want to earn $1 million a month, or you want to sign your own check. And I said, I raised my hand, I said, this is me. And yes, and actually before buying a car, I felt the need to stabilize my life. I'm obviously coming from that background where we used to drink womanize because we thought womanizing is an in thing, you remain about time. But I decided, you know what, to go into business, I needed stability. And before buying a car, then got married. Then 2 months later, resigned. And the first sales opportunity I had was to sell insurance, and only sold for 2 months and realized this is not for me because the company that employed us did not really give us proper training. Then I had plan B because obviously I had the installment on my car. So I started selling glasses, linen, crockery, fire detection system, and then in the process I get an opportunity to sell hair care products for one company in Johannesburg.
And it was your wife Connie who persuaded you to buy the car, and as I understand it, if I remember it, you couldn't quite afford it at the time.
No. I couldn't drive. When I bought my car, I had never driven a car in my life, and you can imagine at the age of 22 buying a brand new car. I mean, it was unheard of in the black communities at the time. I bought a Toyota Corolla, 6,800. It was one of the most expensive cars, you know, brand new. And I paid 3,000 rands deposit, and I had an installment of 180 rands a month. So,
but isn't that gut feeling that makes an entrepreneur? You thought, yes, this is right, even though
no. I mean, that's a reason why I bought a car, because I wanted stability, because I didn't want my friends in the townships to think my car is a car to drive them around to Shebins and so forth. You know, I needed to really have an excuse that not to be abused.
So then you got married and
I got married,
down.
and you can imagine at the age of 22, if I look back at my life, one of the best decisions I've ever taken. If I reflect on my life, getting married at that age was the best decision that I so much treasure, because here am I with Connie now 30 years later. And I look at our achievements. But at the same time, have we achieved? Yes, a lot from a material point of view. Yes, we have achieved a lot, some that I never thought possible. But at the same time, we still have another 20, 30 years of living life if we take care of ourselves. But the country's got major challenges ahead.
Well, we'll talk about that in the second half, but also we'll talk about how you formed your company, Black Like Me, where you made your treasure and your multi-millions. So hold that thought. I'm talking to Herman Mashaba here, entrepreneur extraordinaire. We're going to a short ad break. We'll see you right after this.